Your hosts are The Great Order and No White Guilt. And this is the after party. The crown winner of last week is Quebec, financially gifting $55. Congratulations. Thank you so much. Good brother. In second place was the one and only Eminent Rain, financially gifting $14. A big thank you as well to you, brother. Financially gift on Entropy, which will be up in a moment at 15% to you, where you can also watch the stream. You can vote and ask questions, make comments, that sort of thing. You can also financially gift on Cash App at no cost to you. Look down into the description for the URLs of both of those platforms. As you all know, say it together, Jared and I evenly share financial gifts with our guests on the after party. Today, we have a long requested, enormous fan favorite, Rebecca, aka Blonde in the Belly of the Beast, on tap. As I say, a huge family to our mothers, to our families in the community, and folks, she has the cutest little baby you have ever seen. Rebecca, please introduce yourself to our esteemed community. Tell them where they can find you, and then our Mr. George here will take us in to the conversation.
Hey folks, I am Blonde in the Belly of the Beast. All I have left is my YouTube channel. I guess I have a Gab, Blonde_Beast, but I'm not super active on there, and that's it. That's all I've got left. So check me out there. My name is Rebecca. I have a YouTube channel. I recently had a baby. So it's not that recently. I guess she's a year now. So I kind of did a little maternity leave, and I've been getting back into the swing of things, doing some interviews with some very controversial figures. So if you want to check those out, they are on my channel. And thank you so much for having me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for being here, Rebecca. And we have a few things to talk about today, but since we're rolling out the red carpet for your first time, some of you may know we always like to get to know someone's background. And this show is largely just about getting to know what's behind different content creators and activists. I really get to know their story and what makes you tick. So people who've been following you for a long time might know that the moniker began when you were living in Seattle, very leftist, anti-white area. And that is what spurred on the Blonde in the Belly of the Beast name. So why don't you take as much time as you need to start telling us, and we'll pepper in questions along the way. But
sure.
we know you're used to doing this. You're a pro. What it was like in Seattle, what you saw, what started to wake you up and begin you on the path to the activism, speaking out, showing your face and name like you do?
Sure. I've actually told this story so many times, so I apologize if I'm repeating to anybody, but what got me to make the channel was not an experience I had in Seattle, but an experience that I had when I was traveling Europe by myself. I'm sorry if you've already heard this story. I'm serious. I just told it like yesterday, but
I haven't. So
oh, great. Okay.
Go ahead.
So
pretend like you're talking to me.
I was this kind of a libertarian type, and I was something of a feminist, and I was working all of these high pressure jobs and failing miserably at them. But I love to travel alone, and because I'm such a bold, independent woman or whatever. So I was in like 2015, I was doing a little European tour by myself, and I had been to Europe previously several times, but it had been a few years. And so I was in Austria. I'd never been to Austria before. And I was sitting in this train station. This was during the first real influx of migrants. And I wasn't really prepared for this Muslim migration event. Like, I wasn't mentally prepared. I wasn't super savvy about what was happening. And I was sitting in this train station in Austria, and I look forward, and there's this group of Muslim men, and one of them, I was able to surreptitiously snap a photo of him, but he was looking at me like he wanted to kill me. Like, wanted to kill me, just rage and hate in his eyes. And he's with a group of his friends, and I don't know what they're saying, but I can tell they're speaking about me sexually. And then they started to throw trash at me. They started to throw trash at me and stuff like that. And I'm just sitting there by myself, and I'm irate, and they're just next to them. They're piles of trash, and they're really dirty and everything like that. And I'm sitting Indian style, and like a little piece of my shoe is touching the chair in this filthy train station. I see this white guy clear the train station. He works there. And I'm like, oh, he's going to come and he's going to bail me out of this situation. He's going to tell them to stop, or because I was was resolute. I wasn't going to move. I was not going to do that. And so he clears the train station and he comes over to me and he says, you're in English, your shoe is touching the chair. Like, you can't be sitting like that. And in the meantime, I'm getting sexually harassed by these Muslims. They're clearly migrants. They're looking at me really aggressively. They're talking about me sexually. I really thought he was going to come over there and be like, you shouldn't treat women like this. And and it was just such a wake up call. I'm like, this white guy walked all the way across the train station to deal with a totally trivial infraction of mine, while I'm in a really vulnerable situation. And it was like, it dawned on me in that moment, I'm in over my head. We have a major migrant issue and white people are not going to bail us out. They're not going to bail us out. And so that just set the tone for the whole trip. And then the entire time it was just dealing with Muslims, dealing with Muslim men the whole time. And it was like nobody in Europe was paying attention to what was going on. They were acting like everything was exactly the same as it was 10 years ago. And the tenor of all of these cities had drastically changed, but it was the frog in the water situation, and nobody really seemed to notice. And then I came back to Seattle and I was just noticing all the gender stuff was really getting to me there. This tranny initiative, and I just started to really pay attention once I got back, how I was being programmed, how I was living my life, and how I also had not been paying attention to the changing city around me. But I was just so angry after my trip that got me to start the YouTube channel, and I just thought it was never going to go anywhere. And then that first video, boy, it really changed my life.
Before we get to Seattle, I have a quick question about Europe. Sure. As a side note, actually, 2015 and news of the migrants coming in affected me greatly too. I had been a few years prior, so I didn't really see as much of that. I was in Germany and the Netherlands. And it had kind of inflamed my heart with this love of Europe and this feeling of ancestral connection. And then I guess coupled with that, a few years later, I started seeing the news of this Trojan horse. And I didn't experience it like you did in that lovely situation, but it was also a key moment for me. But I wanted to just ask, was it purely that kind of, I just want to travel, as you were saying, or looking back, was there any seed that you can suss out of something deeper calling you to Europe, that you wanted to see ancestral homelands and that kind of thing?
Oh, it was definitely always that. I don't want to make it seem like I was just like, I wasn't partying or anything like that. I've always had a deep reverence for Western art and literature and music. Yeah. And so it was mostly a museum tour. Like every time I go to Europe, I'm just doing museums all the time. And that was it. And I had recently become interested in my heritage. I had found out that I was 99.9% Western European. And I had always known that, but I viewed myself like many Americans do as this European mutt, and I wasn't super interested in my heritage. But there must have been something at that time that was making me investigate where I came from and really see the origins of this great Western story. And I think that must have been the impetus.
Yeah.
And it was deeply upsetting to me. And I really took it personally that the Jewel of the West especially had been eroded in this way. And I stopped thinking about America as, I'm an American. I started thinking about myself as, in terms of my ancestral homeland. And I think that must have been a manifestation of just seeing America for what it is. Which is this melting pot that really nobody shares any ideals in any meaningful way anymore. And so it became less important to me. And I wanted to search out where I came from.
Yeah. Similar. And maybe we could talk about that a little later when we talk about America. Because I think there's things we have to learn from each other. Americans, but really Australians and everyone who's kind of in the diaspora, and Europeans. It might be a little easier for us in a few ways to see us as Western people in general. Not that we want to make everyone the same. Definitely, as Jason has a nice turn of phrase. He says something to the effect of, Jason, you might say it better than me, but if we, the vision we have is the Hungarians will be more Hungarian, the Welsh will be more Welsh. We don't want to squash it all together. We want to preserve that true diversity we have. yet at the same time recognize that overarching heritage and civilizational thread that we have together. I mean, the West is definitely an effective term, but sometimes I say, just to kind of wake people up a little bit, I consider America European civilization.
Mhm.
And I know our history is sometimes it's like we bucked the system and went against the British crown and things like that. But still, all of our mores and civics and customs and laws, everything, it's Western,
Mhm.
particularly British, but generally Western. But anyway, this is about you. So tell us a little bit about what Seattle was like and how coming back, you were kind of making all these connections after coming back from Europe.
Right. I mean, initially it was this concept of whiteness. It only emerged in me when people began to tell me that I was bad. I kind of was apathetic about it before, but now especially, I'm rejecting this concept of whiteness because European cultures are so distinct, and
Yeah.
so I don't even know if I like to call myself white anymore. I say, I'm British, I'm Scottish, I'm probably Irish. I don't know. I mean, I don't exactly know where my origin is, but in general, I don't really like to say that. So it did start as this rejection of being told that I'm bad, and seeing that propaganda all over Seattle all the time. But it really was the gender stuff that was the final straw. And I remember in Seattle public schools, they made all the 8th grade boys stand up and take a pledge not to rape. And even though I didn't have children at the time, I looked at that and I was like, am I going to have children and raise them in an environment where they are treated as rapists in training? And I just found
Yeah.
that so
Yeah.
appalling, that the way I teach my children was going to be influenced by an outside force. I would have no control over that.
Yeah.
And so distasteful that I just started planning my life in a way that I was going to be able to protect my children from this influence. And I knew that that meant leaving.
And
It was, sorry, go ahead.
no, please. Sounds
Oh,
like you still had a thought.
it was just the way that men especially were being treated in the environment. And then I was seeing so many emasculated men in the dating environment, and I was dating at the time. And I didn't really understand myself, but I found myself just instinctively disgusted with male obsequiousness when I was on dates and stuff, but I didn't understand why. I didn't really have that self-knowledge to know that, I'm attracted to being assertive, to assertive males and things like that. I still was in this mentality like, oh, I want to marry a super nice guy, but I was going out with all these nice guys and I was like, ooh, this isn't doing it for me.
Yeah. It kind of plays into what I wanted to ask, and that is, in your work life and in your social circles, if even before you were more outspoken and maybe forming your views and not quite articulating them as much, did you feel this instinctive difference? I mean, you were already speaking to it in your dating life, so maybe you could give us some other examples between you and some of these other people. We speak to a lot of people, especially those who are pursuing journalism or artistic pursuits. I myself was in creative pursuits in a city as well. And even before I knew what I was, it's like they knew what I was before I knew what I was. Like I would go to the arts areas, and I still, I'm an artist, so I get along with other artists. You do get along with people whose brains work like you. But the
Right.
whole, as you were saying, maybe some of the guys that you were going on dates with, that kind of ironic hipster thing, nothing's too that serious, nothing means anything. There was always just this divide. They could just kind of smell it on you. And there was just all of these social signals, very subtle, but now in retrospect, you realize that there was this different vibration that you were on.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was this obsessive inclusion of people that were different just for different sake. And I don't know how old you are, but I'm 33 and I graduated high school in 2006. I went to a giant high school, 2,500 people. There were the tranny thing was like not even on our radar. There were no trannies at my school. And so I watched the evolution of all of this gender this weird gender stuff start to take younger generations. And if it wasn't naturally occurring in my social stratosphere, then it's like, this is not a natural phenomenon. So I knew it had to be propaganda, but that still would get into my college experience. And so I kind of just knew that something was going on that was changing society. It was an external force, and this was mandatory. This was some mandatory thing that we were going to have to buy into. And I might not have had the awareness to realize that it was leftist propaganda, but I knew that I wanted to reject it just because I didn't consent to it.
And you've spoken about this, so I could say you're originally from the Midwest, right? So was it a very homogenous kind of area that you grew up in? And
I did grow up in a really wealthy white suburb of St. Louis, but at my high school, they did inner city busing from the worst area of St. Louis.
Yes, I've seen that.
And it was preposterous. It was just, I made a video about this, and it just, oh man, people were so angry. But what I saw, the worst racism that I saw was against the inner city Black kids and the Black kids that grew up in the county. And there wasn't a lot of Black on white or white on Black stuff, which everybody wanted to act like there was. But those city kids hated the Black kids that grew up in the county, hated their guts. And I was watching this, and I'm like, I just didn't really understand why, because they were given an opportunity to get out of their environment too. And none of them took it. Inner city buzzing, it did not work at all. I didn't know anybody from the inner city that changed their life trajectory. It was all, teen moms and people dropping out. They had an incredibly high dropout rate. So none of them were taking advantage of this golden opportunity that they had to get out of their environment, to go to a good college. And I just kept thinking, like, why? And why do they hate the county Black kids so much? And it was due to the fact that, like, this was never going to change their home environment or this inner city culture. And so I started to realize that really early, that we're not actually changing their lives by giving them opportunities. And so pretty early on in my life, I realized this was going to have to be a change that started at whatever root culture belongs to the inner city and their families and fatherlessness.
Yeah, I saw the same exact thing.
Really?
And everyone, yep. Any issues that I had as a kid was with the busing kids. And I didn't go to the particular school, but it was in my neighborhood. And I had a friend that I met that came over to our school from that school. His mom got him out. And the things they told me, like kids throwing desks at teachers and knife fights, it was nuts.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, that's what we all see. And I spoke to other people that went to other schools like it. I'm on the East Coast. And it's like we see everywhere. Unfortunately, instead of bringing them up, it was all about that environment being brought down, the native environment being brought down.
That's exactly the experience that I had. And then we did sex education with these kids when we were in like the 7th grade, and nobody knew anything. And then the conversation that I heard coming out of these inner city girls that were like 12 and 11, 12 and 13, like they were talking about stuff that I didn't even know existed, sexual stuff. And I was just like, wow, it's like a different world. It's like they're living in a different world.
Yeah, exactly. So with some of your background, we'd love to hear, we know our chat would love to hear a little bit more specifically about what was the moment that you said you want to start making videos and why you did that. And I know you said you didn't think the channel would go anywhere, but you still had to have some kind of motivation or impetus behind the whole thing, and how that, and also along the way, tell us when you did start realizing you were gaining an audience. Maybe you said, okay, what am I going to do with this? Or you felt like you had a responsibility now that you have some eyes and ears on you.
Well, I was seething, and I just remember trying to go to sleep at night, and I was just so mad. I think they call it red pill rage, but when you realize that you've been lied to your entire life about basically everything, and your government education has served to set you back, and I just felt like I was so behind. Like my grandparents got such a better education. They knew so much more than I did. They had read more. And I was just like, I was just irate. And I was just looking at the city around me. And I just remember trying to go to sleep every night and just being like, oh, like I can't sleep. I'm so mad. And I just had to get it off my chest. And so I just had to make this YouTube video. And then I sent it to my brother, who's always given me really good advice, before I released it. And I was like, I don't think this is going to go anywhere. I don't know if it's any good. And he watched it and he was like, that was excellent. And here's what's going to happen when you put it on the internet. He's like, you should put this on YouTube, but you're going to have to quit your job and you're going to get doxxed, which he was right about that. And it's going to drastically change the trajectory of your life. And if you're willing to accept that, then you should post it, because telling the truth right now is it's a really important time. And you'll look back at whatever meaningless job you have right now and you'll be happy that you did this, but it is going to change everything. And so I thought about it. And then he was like, don't tell mom and dad also. Don't tell mom and dad. So I thought about it.
Mom and dad know now, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. And they're super proud. But I think in the beginning, they would have been like, listen, this is a huge risk. You're never going to be able to have a normal job. And they were in kind of a risk reduction phase of life.
Right.
And I kind of saw where society was going in 2015. I mean, 2015, 2016, I was making videos about balkanization. Is America worth saving? And things like that. And I think my parents were still like, we can turn this around and blah. I mean, they're not like that anymore, but I think they would have discouraged me from posting it. But now they're super proud. So I just didn't expect it to go anywhere. And then I emailed some people that I was a huge fan of at the time. Karen Strawn was a huge influence on me, Girl Writes What. And then I was watching a lot of Gavin McInnes at that time. And so I emailed him and I had no views on it. And the next day he got me on his show and it just catapulted my viewership. And so I went from like 0 subscribers to 20,000 subscribers basically overnight. And it was wild. I couldn't even, you remember that back in those days, it was like the Wild West on the internet. You could say whatever you wanted.
I wasn't on it, but I was one of the people watching, and that was kind of gearing me up for eventually doing my thing. So
did you start?
I remember that. I started my website and I started posting videos in late 2017. And then Jason and I met virtually and started doing this show together in the beginning of 2018, about 6 months later.
It was still fun back then.
Yeah, it was. So much has changed. It feels like we've been doing this 10 years already. Yeah. Once you had that initial 20,000, and you realize, wow, okay. As it progressed, like, what were the main themes that you were talking about? Like, what were the things that you kept returning to that were most on your mind and in your heart?
It was pretty conventional 2016 stuff, like poning social justice warriors and lol feminism. And I don't know that it was very substantial content, but it was essential for my progression into the reality that this country is not going to be able to sustain itself. And then now what I mostly talk about is how do we prepare for what's coming? How do we develop a sense of realism amongst people in our culture and for what they're going to have to deal with? And without those building blocks of, owning SJWs and everything like that, I never would have gotten here. But my main criticism of people on the right, definitely not you guys and people like Red Ice and everything like that, is there's this huge segment of people that have just never intellectually developed beyond feminism bad. Right. And I don't know if it's just fear or if they actually are stuck in this mentality. Have you seen that a lot on the right?
I've seen some odd things. Jason and I, especially, I have to say it, Jason's been doing this for a very long time, and specifically activism about people of European descent. And then he's been doing his own Going Free stream since Jason, the beginning of 2019, about a year after we started the after party. So that is based on what he does in the Going Free books and the other books he's done. So a lot of the community here is on his steam. I have to give credit where credit is due. But we've done this show together, as I've said. But this particular chat and the people that we know in our orbit are some of the best people that I've met. And Jason and some of the people I work with closely are some of the most honorable people. It's amazing. As I said, I have a background as an artist, and actually being able to pull off certain projects, certain book projects or video contests, different things I've done, sometimes just with people I know virtually over email.
Yeah.
These people actually return emails on time and do things on time.
Polite.
And it's amazing. In the broader sphere of just, I 95% of things I see online, I ignore. I don't have time or energy for it. But yeah, it depends how wide you cast that net and what definitions you use. But I unfortunately see a lot of people who, maybe because they grew up on the internet entirely, they don't have that social intelligence and the nuance. I know nuance is a tricky thing, because the left, anti-whites, that whole thing, they'll use what they'll say is nuance to kind of throw you off and make these odd arguments and act like nothing means anything.
Right.
But that doesn't mean we throw nuance out the window either. I really don't like this checklist, just speaking personally for a second, since you asked, this kind of checklist mentality I see. It's kind of our own version of NPCs, where it's like men only have to be this way and women only have to be this way, or they figure a few things out, but then it gets to their head and they don't have the life experience, they don't have the social intelligence, and there's still a lot of lopsided views. At best case scenario and worst case scenario, there's outright attacks and harassment, and people throwing stones at each other, a lot of unnecessary nonsense. So yeah, I do see that, but I largely steer clear of it.
That's true. Yeah. And one of the things that was told to me when I started my YouTube channel is this is going to destroy your social network. And I just felt like, I don't care. Fine.
Well,
I mean,
I wanted to ask you about that. Like, what was your experience of the people that when you got a new social circle, you started being a guest or talking to other people? What's your experience been of people that care about this and this whole crazy scene?
It's kind of a mixed bag. I found a lot of really reliable people that are lifelong friends, but you do have to have a certain personality type to be able to live in this sphere and protect your ego from online scrutiny and from hit pieces and things like that. You have to be egomaniacal to a certain degree so that it doesn't affect you emotionally in a meaningful way. And so I see a lot of people really high in narcissism, like really high in narcissism in our social sphere. And that's a problem, although we do need some narcissistic people to keep things afloat. But I think for the most part, it's just people that kind of fell into this and they're doing the best that they can to roll with the punches.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, people are confused and you do have to be patient. It's true. I just don't like when I see, harassment and things like that. We can't have tolerance for things like that. Yeah. I mean, it's been said before, I'm certainly not the first to say it, but something like this, where you really have to step out, and we're heretics. In the moment in history we find ourselves in, the civilization, the society we find ourselves in, we're talking about the most taboo things. So that takes someone who actually either did a lot of work on themselves and is very self-actualized and has a strong personality, but is able to balance a lot of things and keep that tension and that harmony in a good way, like you were saying, or people who have nothing to lose, maybe because they were kind of from the fringes of society, and it kind of attracts the best and the worst.
Right.
It's an interesting mix.
There is something particularly resilient about somebody that was a former pariah because they know the ropes. And so we do kind of need that fringe element too. It gives us an edge.
Yeah. Absolutely. It feels like we're, like you said, the 2015, 2016 era, when Trump was a candidate, and then after he immediately got in, that was a whole energy and thing. And then there was kind of a lull, and then there was the last couple of years, and now post the US election, Jason's spoken a lot about this, it's kind of separated a lot of people out. A lot of people have kind of gone to either extreme, like they've gotten more resilient and more savvy about what's going on, or they've really gone off the edges, and they think they're just going to say crazy things because it's all over, or they're going to go like live in the mountains and forget about it. Like we see all kinds of extremism. So it's like we're in a new moment now, I think, where we're going through this eye of the needle, but it feels like there's a new chapter right now. I kind of sense, it's hard to put my finger on, but a new chapter in our thing. And I think ultimately it's selecting for people who really want to be here and really have the right things to say. And I think there's a convergence of awakenings too. There's all the attacks on people of European descent, like we've been talking about. But personally, I do think that everything going with COVID, there are fellow travelers who might not even realize some of the things we've realized yet. But the main thing is they're questioning the narrative. They're questioning what the media's been told them or what they were educated in. And there might be a lot of overlap and crossover and interesting cross-pollinations now. So maybe that's a good segue into hearing a little about COVID. I know you talk to your guests on your own show about this a lot, of where you see things with that right now. What do you think they're trying with all of this, and maybe some of the silver linings too, because I've heard you talk about that as well.
Yeah, I mean, for some people, like my family especially, 2020 was just the best possible year for us because it allowed us to take advantage of so many, especially financial opportunities,
Yep.
that arise when the world is living in fear. And I'm particularly unsympathetic to people that are living in fear of COVID. In the first few months, perhaps, and I know we saw a lot of that on the right, but I was pregnant at the time, and I'm a total hypochondriac. And by about March of 2020, I was like, yeah, this is not what we're being told.
I'm glad to hear you were okay, because I was really sympathetic towards women that were pregnant last year. I thought,
Oh,
what a
yeah, they
hell
were
of a time to
freaking me
be pregnant.
out. I mean,
Yeah.
it was wild. But my midwife in the very beginning, because I was asking her about all sorts of stuff, and she was like, "Listen, I don't know what this is. Nobody really knows what this is, but I can tell you right now that we're all gonna get it. So just chill out." And then after she told me that, it was kind of this acceptance of like, "Oh, okay." And then I did get it last month, and I was like, "This is it. This is fine." Kind of late in the game, but I still kind of lack sympathy for people that allowed their lives to be dictated by fear. And from the beginning, I was able to see that this was instituted as a control mechanism for the populace, and they wanted to see what we will do in this kind of situation. And I still to this day, I don't really know how contrived it is. COVID is totally real, and I believe the whole narrative of everything that they've told us. But I get real conspiratorial about it. Real conspiratorial. I don't want to say too much.
Yeah. With the silver linings, we talked to people about this, with like people spending more time with their family, or as I said, kind of more people connecting the dots. I mean, it's this wild separation because, again, I was listening to some of the conversations you've had. I've made similar observations. I was talking to my brother about this just yesterday. The amount of people just going along to get along and people that don't push back is crazy. I mean, we did that before, but to see that level of just, I'm just going to keep my head down and not question anything. But that's not to say that no one's waking up too, because there are people that are realizing, like I live in an area, I don't share too much personally online, but I live in an area where, let's just say it's not the kind of place where there were no restrictions. It's the kind of place where you would think that most people would be going along with the narrative and what they hear on CNN, which of course is true. Everything is 100% true. But literally, even the types of people you wouldn't expect that have backgrounds or jobs that you would think would be going along with the agenda have told me or family members. I hear anecdotes from workplaces. Almost no one really believes what's going on, either about what happened on November 3rd or with COVID.
Right.
Yeah, people, there is a lot of awakening going up at the same time. I know. Okay, I have a question for you. I've thought about this too. It's a two-edged sword. You see that most people do go along to get along, and there's a part of me that tries to be sympathetic, and I think that's just how society has to be. We were all mavericks. Nothing would get done. There would be no teamwork. It's almost like what you were saying about the high narcissism of our thing here. So in a way, it's easy to resent them and look at them and say, these people are so weak. It disgusts me sometimes, as I'm sure you as a woman, it disgusts you, like you said. But then at the other time, you say, well, if we are able to turn things, the consciousness and the narratives in our favor, as we see slowly happening, and a lot of that is coming from, we see in our community here all the time. that a lot of these people that go along to get along, well, once our narratives take hold more and there's more social cues and social rewards about that, then maybe they'll be like, oh, okay. I mean, I know it's like, do you want people that are bellwethers, but then at the same time,
Yes.
if that's the nature of the masses, then maybe that's a good thing. Maybe there'll be a tipping
Oh,
point.
yeah. Definitely. I mean, I think that in our community, because we are high in narcissism, that we are always projecting our own intellectual competence on the masses. And it's like, do we really want to live in a society filled with people that are intellectual leaders? How annoying would that be? Like, we have to have a large subset of society that's just going to adopt the cultural narrative and go with the flow. Like, we need that. So I agree with you. Part of this has been like, wow, I am so disappointed in the individual that is adopting all of these, all the lockdowns and everything like that. However, it will be so easy once we're able to shift the Overton window in a meaningful way to just get these people on board. We won't have to do any more work. So it is a double-edged sword. You're right.
Which is, yeah, as I said, a lot of people here, like, we love our community because they don't just watch this show. They're activists.
Right.
I don't want to sound like an ad, but online and offline, we have people here tell us every week, emailing Jason every day about things they're doing locally in their community, initiatives, pushing back, changing things on school boards or at their colleges, just amazing stuff. And we see that those kind of little cells forming everywhere. Again, I've heard you speak about this, where the anti-whites are everywhere. Like, they have their fingers, like, you'll show up in this like little school board in middle America, and they're pushing this agenda. There's like agents there to push this agenda, and if you do the research, they're like part of this Soros group, and how we need to be really local about that as well. If you have any little PSA to share about localism for a minute on that note.
Well, there is this question: should we invest our energy into altering existing institutional structures or into building something new? And formally, I've been like, why can't we do both? But we do have such a limited, limited energy, limited power that I do think we have to choose. And in terms of overturning institutions from within, I think that their power is too great. Like, we're never going to be able to infiltrate the tech sector or anything like that. I just don't see that happening. Google is this monolith. We're never going to be able to do that. So I do think it's about circling the wagons in community building right now. And I live in North Idaho, and the thing I'm seeing is just massive infiltration from California, which is fine. Some people need political refuge. They're political prisoners in their own state, and they need to go somewhere where they'll be accepted. But what I'm seeing is this influx of boomers mostly that are like, why is it so great in North Idaho? And they just have no self-awareness about the policies they're bringing from California. And I actually had somebody here doing some work on my house, and she was from Boston, and she was about my age, and she was saying, I love it here. It's so safe. It's so beautiful. And she's like, but I have a real problem with the lack of diversity. And I was just like, what are you doing here? You just listed all the problems that Boston is having. It's too dangerous, blah, 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 blah. And don't you have the awareness to see that the reason it's great here is that it lacks diversity and dealing with a homogenous culture, even though there are going to be some downfalls, like everybody wants to talk about food culture. Who cares? White people can learn how to make burritos too. Yeah, it just wasn't registering with her. And I see her all the time at our natural grocer and the farmer's market. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, go back to Boston.
Yeah.
What a shame. What a shame. We see that it's happening in Texas as well, and several states where they're fleeing from these destruction of their environments because of their anti-white policies, because of anti-whiteism, the ideology that breeds things like feminism. Just this hatred of Western kind and Western civilization. That's really what is at root. And Rebecca, you're going to be really excited. But before I tell you why, I'm going to tell everybody that we just passed the bottom of the hour about 11 minutes ago. We have a hard out at 4:15 Eastern time. So your questions, comments, financial gifts, get them in early for Rebecca, because we will be tapping out exactly at that time, not even a minute later. So we would love to be able to go about 3 hours talking with Rebecca. As everybody can tell, everybody in the audience is just like, please already have her back And we're not even 20 minutes into the show yet. Have her back, Jason. We absolutely will have her back as often as she wants to come back.
Wonderful.
I will say that you're going to be really excited because we have actually cracked the code. And it is about the story that you live in. Yeah. And this has been something that I have worked on for my whole life. And you can get started by simply, all you need to know to get started is use the words anti-white, Antiwhiteism, which is the ideology that they push. They can call it a bunch of different things. Wokeism, it's anti-whiteism. Feminism, it's anti-whiteism. Liberalism, it's anti-whiteism. And that we are Western kind, a people with a single biospirit, though we have a great many varieties of Western culture and Western civilization that we produce. We love every one of those. And as Mr. George said earlier, it's part of our practice that we envision a world where the Brits are more British, Southerners are more Southern, Canadians are more Canadian. And that would be exactly what we would want if left to our druthers. That would be the way that it would fall out, because we love all of that variety. How glorious would it be to walk into a main street where you had restaurants from all of these different places in Europe, and maybe you had the little girls dancing in the Polish bar in their little outfits, and the little girls little girls dancing over at this other restaurant, maybe from Austria or Estonia. Wouldn't that be wonderful? And all of their native costumes. We would love that as white people. We don't need to have all of this from all of these other places in the world that don't comport with our biospirit, which is, you can understand that, Rebecca, very simply as instinct. Every animal on planet Earth has instinct. Every variety has instinct, just like different breeds of dogs, different instincts. Race is another word for breed. And we have different instincts, and instinct in a multifaceted, intelligent animal is culture. That's why everywhere white people go, they produce Western culture. Everywhere Asians go, they produce Asian culture, and etc. So we have actually had immense success by living inside of our own story, being the hero in our story rather than the villain in theirs. And you mentioned a little earlier about these people who get stuck in things like it's all about the feminism. Partly that is due to you have these conservative so-called leaders, these misleaders. And we took on one yesterday, and we are in the process of taking her down. She was publicly saying that it is evil, wrong, racist, white supremacist to call critical race theory anti-white. Doing everything she could to say that it isn't anti-white. And we have reached, I think, nearly 1 million impressions just through HB 2014 alone, making clips of the video we did a roast of her yesterday. It was glorious. And
she was politely, I'm going to let this out of the bag. She was, of course, as Jason and I always would be, 3.5 years of guests can attest to this. No drama here. Politely invited a few months ago to be on this show when we thought that she was more maybe of our ilk. We knew that she wasn't entirely, but we thought, hey, we could have a good conversation. She could have spoken to two guys right here who it would be laughable to call us supremacists, never said anything of the sort. And instead, we're seeing this behavior.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, and I'd like
never heard from her, by the way.
They never heard from her. And I gave her a copy of my book, Crucible, and she downloaded it, so she thanked me for it. But yeah, she ends up being a gatekeeper par excellence, although we have subsequently destroyed her. Critical race theory. Critical race. And we'll be doing that a lot more. We're not going to allow these Republicans and these conservatives to stand in the way of a healthy love for our people. And Rebecca, what we like to say is we invite everyone of all immutable characteristics to assist us with putting an end to anti-whiteism, because it's destroying the West, therefore destroying the world that they live in and love as well. All of the people, non-white people, whatever they might be in Western countries. If the United States, if Germany, if England, if the rest, if they end up becoming something other than Western, those individuals will suffer as well. So we do have quite a few individuals, non-white individuals, who have joined us in service to white well-being and putting an end to anti-whiteism, something that people thought could never be done. But of course, this is a movement of love, hope, and redemption. And that's why we have the great success that we have. That's Jared was absolutely right. This community is the AP. This is the advanced placement. People who come here are doers. They're making things happen. And so that's part of the reason why they like somebody like you so much, is because you've been a doer and you've taken these things on head on. You've grabbed the bull by the horns. And despite being a woman who, of course, is going to be much more easily threatened, much more easily terrorized than most men, not all men, but most men, you were out there, and a very attractive woman, a lovely woman, of course, would be the subject of much more attention and vituperative attacks. So it is to say a lot that you have taken those attacks. Yes, the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. It is wonderful that you've taken those attacks and you've stayed strong and actually prospered now with a lovely husband and little baby. And we hope many, many more for you. But we are talking about, just I mentioned there, critical race theory. Your thoughts? It's sweeping, of course, the entire Western world. We're suggesting that people use it to help introduce our brothers and sisters out there to the lexicon that we use, terms like anti-white and anti-whiteism. And what do you see? What has been your point of view, and how has it impacted the place where you are?
I think it's actually impacted a lot of parents in a positive way, because I want to see this trend towards homeschooling. I think that is the best way for people to control the propaganda that their children are going to be messaged with, which is something of an inevitability. So critical race theory, it seems like, especially in my region, it has just been a bridge too far. It's just been a bridge too far. So a lot of parents are like, absolutely not. My children are not going to learn any of these things. This is garbage. And so they're pulling their kids out of school. They're paying attention to the other messaging that's going on. And in that way, I think that it's been something of a positive force for parents, and for changing the mentality around education and the necessity of public education, which it's really not. I mean, I don't know about you, but I went to public school. I got something of a garbage education. And I realized at some point that my great grandparents, educated in single room schoolhouses with a dozen kids of different ages, got a much more comprehensive education than I did. And how is that even possible with so much of our tax money going to the educational process? How is it even possible that I know less than my great grandparents did? The entire concept is preposterous, and I think that is part of the awakening. And so I know it's a little counterintuitive, but I'm thinking, more critical race theory in the same way that I love to see trannies dominating female education, because how preposterous it is just an awakening for all people that are looking at this going, what? Critical race theory seems to be the hill that a lot of parents are willing to die on. And so I'm like, the more propaganda, the more outright propaganda they want to introduce into public education, fine, go for it. Great. That's great. Because at some point, parents are going to be like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. They're going to pull their kids out of school. They're going to realize that homeschooling curriculum is excellent. It's cheap. You can teach your kids so much more in less time than you can in public schools. And so people are like, how can I do it if I'm working and my wife is working? You need 3 hours a day. You need 3 hours a day, and to give your kid a lot of time outside. And there's so many homeschooling groups to socialize your children. That was another argument I heard all the time. Because I don't know about you growing up, but homeschool kids when I was growing up, they were weird. They were a little weird, but that's not what we're seeing anymore. We're seeing, yeah, it's a totally different thing. We're seeing sports for homeschooled kids, entire teams of sports for homeschooled kids. And then they're getting so much time outside. Their education is so much more condensed. And it's just a different beast now. And parents are seeing, wow, this is feasible. Like, I really can do this. I can do this with both parents working. My child knows more. Their education is so much better. Their vocabulary is better. They're ahead in math. And where there are deficits, we can just get a tutor. And then it becomes possible for all of these people. So I'm actually, in that way, pro-critical race theory. Like, more of this in schools.
In a roundabout way. We have Brant Danger, one of the mods who's here right now. He has a whole online homeschooling resource he's building called School of the West. As Jason said, HB 2014, also modding right now. Did clips taken from Jason's show about the aforementioned critical race theory denier yesterday that's getting like 1 million views. Just a couple examples of people doing active things. Sarah Dye, among other women, have been guests several times on our show, has spoken particularly about homeschooling. We do have a great variety of people here, including a lot of families and moms on our show. Jason and I this is not just video game guy stuff on our channels. So why don't we hear, I know a lot of people want to hear from you about this. So in the closing minutes, before we take some questions from the chat, enjoy this question. I know you will. Just motherhood and how wonderful it's been and how it's changed you and what that's been like.
Sure. Yeah, I gave birth to my baby Emmeline about a year ago, and the moment that I met her, it was like I'm gonna try not to cry. Like when I talk about how much I love my kid, it gets me every time. But the moment that I met her, it was just this, everything convalesced, and I just realized that nothing I've done in my life has ever mattered. Like it's all been a stupid waste of time. And my world got so small. It got so small. And that's another reason I took a break on my channel, because I just, something happens biologically with women when they have a child where they can't deal with these external forces. I'm like, the world is falling apart and the election and blah, blah. And I was just like, I don't care about any of this. I have to keep this baby alive and protect her from anything that's going to come her way. And it's just been such a wonderful experience. And I just feel, I used to have so much disdain for feminists, and now I just feel like, wow, these women are so angry, even if they don't realize it, because they've been robbed of this beautiful, just wonderful and fulfilling experience of having your child look at you and you're just their world. Just all the love that is in Emmeline's heart, that the way that she looks at me. And it just makes me so sad that these bitter women are never going to have that experience. And so I have this rage now for people that have indoctrinated young women with feminist ideals, and older feminists for not coming out and saying, not having children was the greatest mistake I've ever made. Because the way they've been cheated is it's just heartbreaking. It's just heartbreaking. And I don't wish that for my worst enemy. Like if you're a younger feminist and you're listening to this and you think that you know everything about the world and you don't want children, you do. Like look inside yourself and see what drives you and be honest, and it will change your life in such a meaningful way, to have that family and to be able to serve that family. And I just can't speak about it highly enough. Children are they're just everything. They're everything. And
how's
they're
it
the future of
colored
this world.
how's it colored your work and the kinds of conversations you're having on your shows?
Well, I find myself angry in a different way. Before I was angry about how I had been indoctrinated, and now I'm angry about the influence they're going to try to appeal to my daughter to. And so I'll think sometimes, like I'm talking to my husband, like we can't let her go to college. And he's like, just enjoy her being an infant right now. Like we don't need to think about this. I'm like, but no, I just can't imagine the heartbreak of some of these parents that mentally are like us, that see their daughter go to some university and then she comes back covered in tattoos and she's cut her hair and she hates her parents and she hates the patriarch. It's like that blessed thing that you spent so much time and energy investing into has just been destroyed by these external forces, and you've lost their soul. You've lost the essence of their being. And I just can't believe that this doesn't make people angrier. If my child came back like that, it would just be so heartbreaking. And so that's kind of changed my content, because I feel like these people, they're not just trying to indoctrinate me. They're trying to take my child from me.
Right.
And that just awakens a spirit in me like I've never known, like a different kind of anger and rage.
Mama bear anger and rage.
Definitely.
Jason, do we have any chat questions for Rebecca coming in yet?
We do. Well, I think we can start right off and get a huge round of raucous emojis going. And this is, Rebecca, I'm going to tell you, you have never been loved anywhere more than in this community, in the Going Free community.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Zero Talent, financially gifting $50,
you.
$50. He writes, "Come back soon, blonde." And
Thank
then
you.
he
I will.
writes, no white guilt. Well, that's fantastic. Thank you so much, brother. That's magnificent. And we absolutely hope she will. We also have White Student Transmission, both of these real grand champions in the service to white well-being. White Student Transmission financially gifting $15 and writing with it, thank you all. Thank you guys for all you do. Well, you are most welcome. And thank you for the kind financial gift and the kind words. I'll swivel over here to Entropy and see what we have. We have the great Yiz, the eunuch, with us. And of course, a magnificent champion in service to white well-being. She financially gifts several times. The first, a $3 financial gift. Thank you, sister. And she writes, an incredible tap. 3 beautiful Westmen, champions speaking truth for our people. May the West never fall, and may we reach every star in the sky. White well-being forever. Well, amen to that. Those are some poetic words. Yiz, again, $3 more. Thank you, sister. She writes, blonde is fantastic! Exclamation point. She might not remember me by name, but I've shared hilarious, awful medical stories with her on the Wednesday call-in show a few times in the last 2 years. She writes, here at the end, love you, sister! Exclamation point.
Love you too. Thank you.
A beautiful little white heart emoji. We have Evela's sunglasses. They live on even though he has not. 3 pounds all the way from across the pond. Thank you, brother. Best wishes from England. You can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending. Amen to that. And that's exactly what we're doing. We are in our own story. We hold the pen and we decide whether or not we are going to be champions for our people. And we know that in the end, when we do recapture our destiny, it will be our names in those history books that our children are reading. Casey writes, with $5 US. Thank you so much, Casey. Thanks for hosting Rebecca. She's awesome.
Thank you.
Adds,
so much.
and then
Radical.
When is Semiagog coming back? We'll have him back soon. He also asked that we connect Semiagog or Ali with Rebecca as well. Maybe we'll have them on at the same time. That would be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, we want to do more twofer taps, like take some of our friends and see what these two are like together. So we'll see about that.
That would be fun. We like those. Yiz back again with another financial gift of $3 more. The amazing Yiz. She writes, in regard to what Blonde said about once we shift the Overton window, so many people will just follow suit. That's why Go Free is the best tactic for curing what ails us. Please illuminate her, Jay. But I think we did. Yes, thank you. We told her just now all about how we're having these grand successes. By the way, Rebecca, you're seeing this anti-white and anti-whiteism get used everywhere. That's because of this community. We've been pushing for many, many years, and it's finally breaking loose. We're past the tipping. But we've been celebrating on my Sunday show, Going Freeze, like there is no tomorrow because of it. Marking every moment that somebody here or somebody there has used anti-white, and more superbly enjoying when the anti-whites in the news media write articles and they interview people, and they're forced to use our dialectic and lexicon because that's what we use, and they end up looking like the villain instead of the good guy. Because that's what they are in our story. They are.
Got to bring them onto our field. That's the thing to remember. You bring them onto our field. People get overwhelmed thinking when they get into this, they have to remember every little bit of history, this and that. One of the main things when I first contacted Jason and I read his book, I was like, I compared it to that myth of the Gordian knot, cutting the Gordian knot. You don't have to be overwhelmed memorizing history and stats about slavery and who did this to who, because you might get into a conversation with someone that knows some more factoids than you do. And then you might be made to feel like, well, wait, maybe I'm in the wrong here. All you have to do is, if your conclusions are going to hurt my family, my friends, my people, my heritage, I reject it whole cloth, period. There's no moralizing that.
Exactly, right. And you guys have done something really good with this labeling. I like to tell people to use Alinskyite tactics, although this is not really what you're doing. But the left, you see them labeling these things, and then suddenly the issue or the mentality or the ideology, it has so much more power because there's this overarching word that you can use that has this meaning, this content behind it. And so I think that's a really good idea, anti-Whiteism, and getting the media to use that terminology will be very, very beneficial.
Yeah, you're right, Rebecca. Those words are loaded with assumptions. That's what I mean about the field, the frame. There's already a frame. You're arguing all these little, the minutia, the details, but you're in their frame. We need to create an entirely different frame. That's what Jason spearheaded, and then we've been developing. And like I said, so many people here going out and being their own little nodes, getting into chats and doing things, or asking pointed questions to other people on other shows to make them have to play on our field. And it's changing the game.
It really is. Let's see. We also have here Casey back again, $5 more. Thank you so much. Writing, thank you, Rebecca, for making the distinction regarding Californians moving to North Idaho, looking for refuge from the compulsory anti-white narrative and culture, and joining like-minded traditional Western values in wholesome communities. Yeah, precisely. There are people coming, from these areas that are refugees. They grew up in their families. Sometimes they have long lineage in these areas. Family built the city and participated in that, and now they have to flee because they're being white erased. That's another one of the terms. And by the way, Rebecca, use this one. What Jared George was just saying is one of the most powerful and widely used dialectics that we employ, and that is, as Jared George just said, if no matter who you're talking with, this is the beauty of this, no matter how educated they are, the anti-white, no matter how much they talk, no matter how skilled they are in making white people look evil, just say, hey, if your conclusion is anti-white, I reject it. And then you win the conversation. And then they have to tell you why it's a good thing to be anti-white, and that makes them a bad guy.
That's that's cutting the Gordian knot.
It's beautiful, but there are many more. And actually, we're getting ready to release the second iteration of edition 2 of my book, Go Free. And as soon as it's released, I will send you a free copy, my dear. We also have Daniel financially gifting $5 and saying, I think, summing up what so many are thinking about this show today. Great show. It is indeed a great show. Thank you so much. We have the orange asking 2 questions of Rebecca. Are you on Odysee? And what is your opinion on the feminist types who insist that their husbands have hyphenated names? One of my friends has a girlfriend who wants a hyphenated last name when they get married. Rebecca.
Yikes. I'm not on Odysee, although I am on Telegram. People have been telling me to get on Odysee, and I probably should open myself up to some of these alternative platforms. I actually will. I will get on Odysee. In terms of the hyphenated last name, I think this is so disrespectful to the husband. It's not just about the name. It's about refusing to put to bed your prior life. And something that you do when you get married is you say, I'm no longer this individual. I'm part of this unit, and I belong to my husband's family. And I think that that's a really important step for women to make. So it's symbolic of a greater distrust of the husband and immediately putting them on this equal egalitarian footing. But I mean, it's just as much of a problem that the husband is not saying absolutely not. And if I were a man and I was getting married and my fiance was like, listen, I want to have a hyphenated name, it would be ultimatum time for me. I'd be like, that's absolutely not going to happen. And if you insist upon it, then we need to break this engagement right now. So it's as much his fault for not asserting himself as the dominant member of that relationship as it is hers for trying to take that power from her husband.
Very well said. We have a financial gift from the great Azimuth Clark, who financially gifts $5. And folks, if you have any financial gifts, questions, or comments you want to make, you better do it quickly, because we are hard tapping out. And looks like not long at all, just a little over 5 minutes. So make sure you get them in quick. Azimuth Clark, $5 financial gift. He writes, Promethean Hails, and Rebecca, that's from my book, Prometheus Rising, Take Back Your Destiny. So it's only slightly related to the original Prometheus story. Promethean Hails, and he writes, "Blonde is amazing," with exclamation points. And
you guys have such a
white-
positive community. Wow.
Oh, we are
Yeah.
absolutely. Well,
There's
with all of our victories.
literally no trolls in the chat. I'm watching the chat.
This is incredible. I've never experienced this before.
Tell your friends. There's a reason.
Yes, precisely. Well, while we wait in these final minutes to see if there are going to be any more financial gifts, questions, or comments for you, dear sister, could you give us any final comments about what you would say to prospective mothers or women who maybe would like to get pregnant or thinking about being pregnant, thinking about being moms? Maybe they're scared. Any thoughts there?
I would say that there's a lot of misinformation about this ruined mom bod thing. And I know when I was scared to have a baby that I was really focused on what was going to happen to my body. And I just didn't want to be this destroyed, damaged woman. First of all, your perception of your vanity really changes because you have a different focus. And so it's not going to be as important to you. And it's not really true. The kind of people that I see that are destroyed after pregnancy are people that are not really taking care of themselves. So just trust your body's ability to be able to bounce back and to enjoy this time with your child. And don't be afraid. I mean, fear, everybody's a little afraid when they're going to deliver and everything like that. You have a fear for your child, but it's just so worth it. And the other advice I have for women, I see a lot of women that are like, before I have a child, I have to do X, Y, and Z. I have to get this in order. I have to have a house. The only thing you have to do is have a stable relationship with your husband and know that you're going to be in it no matter what happens. You don't have to have anything else in order. Do you think that all these Mexicans are like, I need this amount of money before I have my ninth child or whatever? Nobody else cares. Nobody's thinking about this like white people are. So have the baby. The only thing you need is the good marriage. That's literally the only criteria. So just do it and do it young and don't wait as long as I did. I had my first baby at 32 and I'll be lucky if I have 3 kids. And if I could do it all over again, I wouldn't start having kids when I was 22 because I was not ready, but I would start getting myself ready when I'm a child, when I'm 12, when I'm 15, for the mentality that I'm going to be a wife and a mom. And then by the time you're 18, by the time you're 20, then you're ready. And I just wish that I had done that. And that's how I'm going to raise my daughter, to be ready when she's very young so that she has the option of having 10 children if she wants.
Oh, gosh, that'll be amazing. Do you imagine your 10 grandchildren? At least
it'd be so wonderful. Oh, and I did have one more thing. There are a lot of women in our movement that are in their early 30s, and they get so much negativity from men in our movement. You know, you've waited too long. I'm selecting for fertility. You're not a dating option. If we really want to get the white birth rate up, it's very important to maximize the years between 30 and 40 for women. It's not ideal. I wish I would have done things differently. However, if you're 30, if you're 35, if you're 37, that doesn't mean that you should give up. You should continue improving yourself and trying to find the best possible mate that you can, and just knock out those kids if you can do it. And just don't listen to people that are saying, you know, you've waited too long, you're damaged. That's not going to help you at all. Just try to make it work. Try to make it work.
I'm going to second that. We have to be realistic about the world that we were born into.
Exactly.
And not make the perfect the enemy of the good.
Exactly.
Jason and I have done a few shows about natural eating and getting rid of the toxins in your life. We're both very into that as well. And if you have that lifestyle or you change into that lifestyle in your 30s, you can definitely, if you don't have any other issues going on, you could definitely have several kids in your starting in your 30s.
Yep. I have a friend who got married at 28 and she ended up having 8 children.
That's amazing.
And so it really can happen, and just have that faith in God, and you really can build this life for yourself. So don't give up if you're in your 30s. You can
Here,
find
Rebecca,
a good man.
even for you, a little motivation. Summer in the chat says, I had my last 3 after the age of 35.
That's fantastic. That's wonderful to hear. And there are a lot of healthy and and positive pregnancy stories in women over 35 and women over 40. And I know it's not ideal. I don't want to sound like I'm like, you have as much time as you need and, you know, wait as long as you want. Knock them out early if you can. But if you're in a situation where the world has done damage to you and you've adopted that feminist lifestyle, you're still welcome in our communities because we're all damaged by modernity.
Precisely. That's why we call this a movement of redemption.
Exactly.
Love, hope, and redemption. That's what we're all about. Now we have, we'll get right now, we're going to keep you talking as we're in the last 3.5 minutes, 3 minutes, about your closing thoughts, whatever you have to say. And please make sure that you tell folks, because we've had questions about your Telegram group where people can find you. So we know it's limited since the anti-whites have gone after you and censored you from so many platforms. And as I ask you to do that, I will say the great Mrs. Jess Horst, a woman who can field a baseball team with a number of
what is it, 9?
I think she has 8 kids. Yeah.
8 or 9. You know her? Yeah, she's great. Yeah.
Yes, she financially gifts $3 and a beautiful little red rose to
Thank
Rebecca.
you, Jess.
By the way,
sister,
she said in the regular chat she had her last at 40.
Wonderful. Jess is great. You can also find me. I have a channel with Robin Riley called Motherland. We've kind of lulled in content because we've been having some sleeping issues with both of our babies, but we're going to get back to it soon. So for motherhood content, check that out. That's Motherland on YouTube. I am Blonde in the Belly of the Beast on YouTube and Blonde_Beast on Gab. And I'm Blonde Beast on Telegram also. So.
There you have it, folks. Make sure you follow her and then beseech her all the live long day to come back and hang out with us again. Mr. George, we have a minute and a half or so, 2 minutes. Go for it.
I'm not going to take the whole 2 minutes, but I just want to thank Rebecca for your time today. I know you're a mom, and it's tough to find even an hour or so. So we appreciate it.
Oh, of course.
And it's been lovely speaking to you. I really enjoyed it. And to all the chat, thank you. And all the people who contributed. You may know my site is thegreatorder.com. It's the hub of all that I do. These shows are cataloged there. And then the creative work I do. I have a song called Horizon. Came out a few weeks ago. Is my latest. I'm releasing a song at a time, not albums. I'm working on a new one now. If I can land this one, it's going to be a little different, a little more electronic. Not totally, but a little more alternative electronic, a little more of an anthem. Lyrics about things that are going on now. I don't like to tell people what to think of the lyrics, but I think it'll be appropriate and it'll be interesting for this summer. So I'm working on that, a lot of other things. And Jason and I have the afterparty.tv that we share as our site that, again, catalogs this show, catalogs Jason's Going Free streams, and some other things that we do. So check that out. Please bookmark our websites. We definitely have more control over those than we do on social media. We're trying to do something that lasts here and leave a record of what's gone on and what we're doing and what we're observing and talking about.
Yeah.
So, we don't trust YouTube. Like, we've had our own sites, both individually, and then a couple years ago started the afterparty.tv as a joint site for a few years. I don't really understand people. I know your situation might be different, but other kind of creators that do different things that just rely on social media is like, why not build a website? Like, why not have a website? And at least you have a little more control over that. And if things go haywire, at least you have a place people can go find you and see all of your links to all your other social media. That's not to say don't follow us. Of course, we have to use the tools we have. Yes. We are the algorithm. Share and like everything and follow us where you can. Jason, please take us out, my friend.
This has been a magnificent stream. It's been a long time coming. Been a big fan of Rebecca's for a long time, and we've been talking back and forth, folks, for a very long time. She's a wonderful lady. So happy for her.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for creating this positive community. I really appreciate it. Everybody's been so wonderful. It was such a lovely chat.
Well, that is very sweet of you to say thank you. And I'll say thank you on their behalf as well. I'm going to give a big thank you to Ray, Roy, Brandt, and HB moderating today. Thank you all. Thank you to everybody who financially gifted, and everyone who commented today. Even a big thank you to all of those who are wallflowers or be watching this in replay. We welcome you to participate, or you can remain on the wall as long as you get out into the world and you help us recapture our destiny. Remember, improving yourself as we improve our people. It was a wonderful time, and we look forward